In, well, basically all my videos, I look at some part of the world and ask why something is the way it is, or why something isn't the way you think it would be. But seeing as we've just hit 250,000 subscribers, I thought I'd do something I rarely ever do on this channel and talk a little bit about myself. 2 months late, but that seems to be a thing with my Q&A videos. So without further ado, let's get the swoosh swoosh ding out of the way and get this started. What state did you originally grow up in? What are your hobbies? What are your favorite foods? And who are you generally? Okay, so that's technically 4 questions, but I'll still answer them all. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area, though districtors might insist on my inability to say so as I was actually born in Maryland. However, my family moved to the Portland area when I was 8, so technically I owe more allegiance to Oregon, but 8 years old is also sort of the sweet spot age where I feel like I belong to both coasts. Like if we had moved out a few years earlier, I'd consider myself Oregonian through and through, but a few years later I'd probably say I'm from DC but live in Portland. So in this timeline I guess really I'm bi-coastal. My usual hobbies outside of video making include a lot of video games, more on that in a bit, and also traveling to different places, which actually tends to overlap a lot with my work on YouTube, and a lot of writing and world building, mostly science fiction and fantasy stuff. And yes, indeed, that's what's been going on with Celestium. It started off as a channel for me to talk about space stuff, sort of like this video, but then sort of became a hard sci-fi world building endeavor depicting a realistic human future in space, and then just sort of evolved into my excuse to pursue sci-fi writing. When it comes to my favorite food, I've always been a very curious eater when it comes to different global cuisines, but living in Berlin has definitely spoiled me when it comes to doner kebab consumption. And who am I generally? Sort of an open-ended question, but in 100 words, I'm a half Ashkenazi Jewish, half Italian, Polish, Irish kid born in Silver Spring, Maryland, who spent their adolescence in Portland, Oregon, and has spent some time living in Berlin. I am very tall, like 9'6" or something like that. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I sort of hop from one hyperfixation to another, but my interests have always been divided into history, culture, all that worldly stuff, and space-related stuff, more specifically space futurism and colonization, which I guess is sort of the former set of interests, but just projected into the future and in space. What is your favorite game? Assuming you mean video games and not board games, I have to give the spot of all-time favorite to Kerbal Space Program. It's one of those games where you kind of really have to love it to enjoy it, but it's also one of those games that's just really easy to fall in love with. I've also played a lot of Minecraft, as it is my favorite form of artistic expression, aside from these videos I guess. I have gone plenty down the rabbit hole of Stardew Valley, and the YouTube niche I've ended up in means I'm basically required to sell my soul to Paradox Interactive. Are you a fan of Star Trek? Just wondering because you used its title font all the way back till now. Indeed, I am very much a fan of Star Trek, and that is the reason I use this font in all my video thumbnails and my branding. It's called Final Frontier Old Style, by the way, if you want to download it for yourself. When it comes to science fiction, or really any sort of formally made audiovisual entertainment, Star Trek is my favorite franchise, but my favorite show specifically is The Expanse. Hence my occasional reference to all my bratnas out there. Do you watch any sports, like football or something? No, I can never really get into that kind of stuff. I've literally tried to in the past, but it just doesn't really interest me at all. There are geopolitical aspects of it that interest me, of course, as seen in my Olympics video, but the sports themselves just don't really interest me. How many writing systems can you read? Which ones would you be interested in learning? Greek and Cyrillic are very similar to Latin, so they're not really that hard. Hebrew was the first non-Latin script that I learned, though the temple didn't seem to bother teaching 7-year-old me and my classmates the language. And I also taught myself Arabic and sort of Hangul, but that one's also atrophied over the years. As far as which ones I'd be interested in learning, Devanagari is probably one I should learn more about. Also, this is where I shout out my merch store, as I have t-shirts showing you how to read and write Arabic and Cyrillic, shown upside down so you can use it as a reference while wearing it. No promises it won't make you look like even more of a tourist though. What is your video making routine or schedule like? I've been trying a new way of writing scripts, where I put all my research notes in one document and plot out all the important parts of a story as well as some jokes I can make before then writing the actual script in another document, as opposed to doing both steps in the same document, which can be messy. But then I generally plot out how exactly I want something shown visually, then I record my audio straight into Final Cut Pro, add a channel EQ and a de-esser to make it sound better, and after that I take out roughly minute-long clips to animate in After Effects, and fill in the rest with relevant stock footage, put on some background music, slap together a thumbnail, release early to my Patreon, and then done. Yeah, okay, I really need to figure out my thumbnail and music situation earlier in the process, as those can be the final snags holding me back, but other than that, that's basically how a KhAnubis video is made. What's your long-term plan? Full-time YouTube, or do you have another career bubbling along in the background? Yeah, that That's been kinda tricky to figure out these past couple of years. I've been doing this full time since 2019, but it's been increasingly difficult lately, what with burnout and the YouTube algorithm seemingly not even knowing what it wants. I am happy with having ended up in the creative industry, but I do really want to spread myself out a bit more and not be tied down to one specific thing. I think there's some sort of saying about putting eggs in baskets or something. But I also don't want to quit this channel outright. It's weird, I've been experiencing constant burnout, but I actually don't want to quit. It's almost as if I'm actually burnt out from the business aspect of it all. Any videos you've had to scrap? Why? Usually it's just ideas that turn out not to have an interesting enough story to make it to a full video, like why rivers make terrible borders, but I also have a mostly completed script on the geography and history of Vladivostok, and I was, and really still am, quite enthusiastic about the idea, were it not for, that whole invasion of Ukraine thing that's still going on. So it just didn't really feel appropriate to move forward with that video back then, and I don't know when it will, but it certainly isn't now. How do you pick ideas for your videos? No surprise, I have a massive list of ideas that I've randomly thought of over the years, but every video must strike the balance between something I'm interested in investing multiple weeks of my life into, something people on the internet would like to see, and something I actually can explain in a 10 or so minute YouTube video with visual material. So if something doesn't really have a clear story or answer to it, or if it takes place in a part of the world where there are just no free images, then that can kill an idea dead in the water. However, the whole process of figuring all that out, especially the second factor, can be a burnout-inducing slog where you throw out so many ideas for videos that you actually really want to do, as you can never be sure which videos will actually do well and which won't. So I'm trying a bit of a new strategy where I just assume you are all 250,000 copies of me, at least in terms of your general interests, and realize that really any topic can be interesting to the internet if you pick a good enough hook and they tell an engaging story. It's not a perfect strategy, but hopefully it'll work better than, I'd really like to make this video, but what if it doesn't get enough views and sends my entire channel down the drain? Oh, it's already been 3 weeks and I don't even have a solid idea for my next video. Let's just go with this potentially popular video that I'm not actually interested in and hope it gets views. Yeah, maybe you can see part of why I've been so burnt out lately. Why did you start with YouTube? / why do you make the videos you do? I've just always been curious about the world and always had an impulse to share cool things I've learned with other people. I started in the early days with Playmobil stop-motion animations about history, most of which are privated now, but after learning about the YouTube educational community early on, I almost immediately switched over. I originally talked about science and social studies topics, however, over the years the social studies topics tended to be easier to make into videos, so here I am today. What was your favorite video to make? I have a playlist of all my favorite videos I've made linked on my channel page, but the video I've had by far the most fun making was why Spain still has cities in Africa. Basically, I got to travel somewhere I've been curious about for a long time, to make a video I've wanted to make for a long time, and got sponsored to do so by a company whose products I really enjoy. And bonus, it did really well, so all around a perfect KhAnubis video. Well, not entirely perfect, but basically what happens when I make a video after rolling a nat 20 and everything. Is there a certain picture you have in your mind of a typical viewer for your channel? And the flip side is, who do you think should be watching but maybe hasn't discovered your channel yet? Oh, interesting. So basically, what do I think the person currently staring at me on their device looks like? There definitely isn't one look to my archetypical KhAnubis viewer, but as for what you're all like on the inside, you're generally curious about the world around you. Well, I mean, everyone is to some extent, but you already know a good bit about the world and want to go deeper than the top page of Reddit. You're probably at least tangentially familiar with modern internet humor. You likely have a Discord account and should join the KhAnubis Discord survey if you haven't already, and it's sort of 50-50 whether or not English is your native language. Basically, those are the assumptions I have in my head when constructing a video, so don't go too complicated in the writing and try not to slur my words in the narration, but also don't dumb things down to middle school geography. How many countries have you been to and what are they? In order of my first visit, I'm from the US, then Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Turkey, Poland, Luxembourg, the UK, Hong Kong and Macau, so technically China but not the mainland, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, Czechia, Austria, Denmark, Sweden, Italy, Vatican City, my 20th country on my 20th birthday. I rode through Switzerland on a bus, but I don't count that since my shoes never touched Swiss pavement. France, then a very long gap for COVID. Spain, oh wait, actually should I count Gibraltar as one of these or technically part of the UK? Mexico, Portugal, Iceland, and my most recent addition was Slovenia as a day trip while making this video. So that's 26 countries, 28 if you separate Hong Kong, Macau, and Gibraltar from each other and their parent countries. And I've also seen Morocco and mainland China from across the border, but those definitely don't count. Is there any special location you wish to visit or been to? That sort of feels like two different questions, but there are a lot of places I really want to go to, like Greece, Japan, South Korea, Bhutan, India, Malta, but if I had to pick one place, it would probably have to be Egypt, depending on safety of course. As for countries I've already been to that I would like to explore more of, number one is definitely Turkey. I've been there twice, but only to Istanbul both times. Actually, sort of the same thing goes for the UK, but with London. Spain I would like to explore more than just the south and a geographically interesting portion. I've also spent a night in Amsterdam and or gone through Schiphol Airport several times, but never really explored the Netherlands truly. Poland and Sweden I basically just stepped across the border, and despite having lived there, I've explored a shockingly tiny amount of Germany. What is your favorite country and favorite capital city or cities? If you remember answering a question like this in your 5K Q&A, it was me too. Oh hey, number one fan of the pals, I do remember you. Glad to see people sticking around after all these years. Well, favorite city is still Berlin, and Berlin is indeed a capital, so it counts. Favorite country though is a much harder question. My answer has definitely changed since 2019, but it still relies on what you mean. Which country do I want to live in the most? Which country have I had the most fun exploring? Which country's politics do I agree with the most? However, if you're going by which country I've had the most fun exploring, that honor would probably have to go to Italy. Please shout out for Bangladesh. By the way, I'm a huge fan of your vids and overall content. Hey, thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. Anyway, shout out to Bangladesh, definitely one of the countries of South Asia. Best public transport system you've been in? Okay, time for the autism to shine. So the way I judge a city's public transportation is by how easy it is to understand, how easy it is to pay for, bonus points if it's cheap, how comfortable it is, and by how much of the city I can actually reach without giving up. I might be biased by the amount of time I spent there, but Berlin has a phenomenal system. However, I also have to include Hong Kong, Amsterdam is basically there by default, and Istanbul actually does a really good job in these categories too, at least from my tourist perspective. Would you come to Puebla, Mexico? You will surely like it. Mexico in general is somewhere I'd like to see more of, but if you know of anything in Puebla that would be good to feature in a video, do let me know. Same goes for basically everywhere, by the way. If there's something or some place that you think tells a unique story and or shows how the world around us came to be, don't hesitate to reach out. If you could, would you move to live in Europe permanently? If so, where? I've tried to in the past, though it can be very hard to get a visa if you're self-employed, but the one true answer is always Berlin. Drinking game, take a shot every time I mention Berlin or Germany in this video. No, actually don't, you'll get alcohol poisoning. Who are your favorite YouTubers? It's kinda hard to answer that when a lot of these people are your friends, but when it comes to YouTube videos whose channels I tend to watch the most frequently, my list is constantly changing, but my rapid fire list as of early mid 2024 would have to include Jay Foreman, Zay Frank, Curious Archive, the 3 channels contributing to the For All Kerbal Kind series, Faria Fergie, The Tim Traveler, Blue Jay, Manuel Bravo. I could go on, but I want to keep these answers somewhat short. If any of you happen to be watching in the comments though, do say hi. What's your favorite flag? Zhelezhnogorsk and Albania both go hard. Bhutan, because that is a really good dragon. Sorry Wales, yours is good too, but the color palette just doesn't really do it for me. South Africa is a master at making more than 3 or 4 colors work together, as is Seychelles, which is positively radiant. And both Maryland and DC have solid designs that reflect their histories and their origins. Yes, I am one of those people who likes the Maryland flag, fight me. What is your favorite mispronunciation of a word from a language you don't speak? Well, I tend not to like those, but I suppose a particularly egregious one is the term panini once you've dabbled in Italian, especially when an English speaker says a panini, because panini is the plural of panino, so it's literally the reverse of an Italian saying vorrei un sandwiches. It's just not how you word things. Did I just casually figure out how to roll my R's after all these years? And finally, what was the weirdest question you've ever been asked in relationship to this channel? Not the answer, I just want to know the question. Well, I did once get this guy named Daniel who asked me what the weirdest question I've ever gotten in one of my Q&As was. Okay, just kidding. But looking back at the previous times I've asked people to ask me stuff, I've definitely never gotten a more memorable question than, describe your dream sandwich. Thanks, Stefan Milo. Okay, now some closing words, because I feel like you deserve to know how things have been going behind the scenes. Especially since I haven't done one of these since 2019. Which, you know, that was like 2 years ago. 5 years ago? You gotta be kidding me. God, this freaking COVID time, I swear to all the deities out there. Namely, how burnt out I've been over the past couple years. Hopefully it hasn't been too obvious, other than how much less often I've been uploading compared to a few years ago, but chasing the algorithm has really taken a toll on me. That being said, like I said earlier, I don't plan on quitting anytime soon. And you are all the reason I keep doing it. You are all holding me hostage on this platform. No. What I mean is, sure, 250,000 is a pretty nice number to look at, especially when coming after, say, 240,000, but building up the community I've been able to over the years, hearing all your experiences in the comments from the places I've talked about in videos, and even meeting some of you abroad is probably the best part of this job, even for an introvert like myself. Well, that and the fact that I can take my passion for learning about the world and teaching what I learned to others, and turning that into a source of income that I can live off of, and thus spend more time doing so. So, thank you so much for getting me to where I am. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Sunday.
How many hills does this country need?